We are excited to have with us today Noel, Stafford, and Jessica and their family. If you were able to be with us in the Bible class hour, you know that they are going to proceed to Tanzania sometime early in next year. Noel grew up there, and I've had a good association with several missionaries that have gone to Tanzania. One of my classmates, Eddie Gilpin, was with Noel's dad, I guess at Chamala, wasn't it? I forget the years for that. Then a classmate of ours a year ahead, Hal Ferguson, he has been at Arusha, been above Chamala, and is now the stateside coordinator for the work at Chamala. I have been personally involved in training students to go to Tanzania. And I was mentioning to him earlier today, Brother Adam Evans, who went to Iringa, Tanzania, and did a great work there. So I'm very familiar with the work. I was a friend of Cy, and in fact, Eddie introduced us many, many years ago. I think it was right after he had left the Brown Trail School of Preaching and was then getting support to go back to Tanzania. So it was a long time ago. But Cy was like Paul, really. He was the Paul of Tanzania, especially in the Arusha area, did a tremendous work. And I'm so excited that the Staffords are going back now as a second generation to carry on their work. We've asked Noel to preach to us today. Noel, come and preach to us.
We really appreciate again y'all giving us the opportunity to be here. Anybody that is willing to hear about our work in Tanzania, we'd love to share it. Ever since we made that decision to go to Tanzania, I'm not going to lie, that's all I think about. That's all I want to talk about. And it really has affected my life. It's really blessed us ever since that decision was made. God's really blessed us in so many different ways. I'm meeting so many great Christians. It's just amazing what people will help you do if you just ask, and just the hospitality we've seen. We just really do appreciate it, and we just appreciate the support I know you're going to do through prayer and just talking. I know one of the biggest things when it comes to missionaries is just the communication, letters, email. Now they got Facebook. It's just a great way to help with that. But we do appreciate it. And what I want to talk about today, and it's something that I think the churches struggle with in America these days, is evangelism. Evangelism, what is it? It's the spreading of the gospel by preaching or teaching. It's a zealous advocate of a cause. In my 44 years of life, and attending several congregations because we used to move a lot, I can't help but notice as the years go by that evangelism in the church, especially when it comes to the individual, is almost non-existent. I also noticed that a lot of members expect evangelism to only be done by their local preacher and by select leaders in the congregation. There's no zeal for a lot of Christians to share the gospel. When one becomes a Christian, we need to have that zeal, and it needs to be ongoing. One thing we may never really know is the trickle-down effect that can happen if you just introduce and share the gospel and they obey the gospel. Just that one person, if you just introduce one person to Christ, the trickle-down effect that could happen. I know one time there was a man who did this one thing. He introduced the gospel to one person. This was in the probably early, mid-'80s in the Coast Guard. A man introduced this man to the gospel, and he obeyed the gospel. That one man was my dad in the early 80s. My dad was not raised in the church. He was raised a Catholic. He was very worldly at that time. But because of one man sharing the gospel, what we talked about today is possible because that one man shared the gospel. And so when we think about that, when we see our friends, our family, and we know they're not haven't obeyed the gospel or they're down the wrong path, we need to think about that. The opportunity we have, it really could change the gospel being preached all over the world. And so we need to learn as Christians to take those opportunities that God gives us. I know I'm just a chicken farmer that lives in Clifton, Tennessee, but I was blessed enough to have a strong Christian father who shared the gospel. So I saw that it's very important that it's on me to share the gospel. And so in 2020, like I told you, God opened up a door for me, and I want to take that opportunity. My family wants to take that opportunity to do that, and that's what I'm doing. I'm stepping out of my comfort zone. I'm going to Tanzania, and I'm hoping to accomplish as much as that God allows me to do. And so I want us today to think about more locally about when it comes to evangelism. Today I want to go over a few reasons why we need to evangelize, but I also want to look at a few people in the Bible who evangelize, their characteristics, and finally ways that maybe I can evangelize. First of all, Matthew 28, 19 and 20. Matthew 28, 19 and 20. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all things that have commanded you, and lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. Commanded. As a Christians, we need to read these verses and realize the importance that it is for me to go out and preach the gospel to every creature. Obviously, Mark 16:15, go ye into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. When I read this, I need to think me. He's talking to me. I need to go out and preach the gospel to everybody, both locally and globally. We need to try to share the gospel. Secondly, we need to second reason is love. Our love. We think of 1 Corinthians chapter 13 when it talks about love and how important love is in a Christian's life. Our love for people, our love for our neighbor, our love for our friends, even love for our enemies, also for our love for Jesus, our love for our friends, our family. But we also need to love for ourselves. Matthew 19:19, love your neighbor as yourself. Most of us understand how to love ourselves, how to love our family, but what about our neighbors, even our enemies? I know that all of us who are Christians realize that if we haven't obeyed the gospel, that we would hope that our friends, our family that were Christians would introduce them, to talk about them, at least at the very minimum, plant that seed in our minds to know how important the gospel is. The third is the reason to evangelize is thankfulness and gratitude. I once was lost in sin. Once we were all separated from God. But God sent Jesus to die on the cross for me, for my sins. In 2 Corinthians 9:15, thanks be unto God for his unspeakable gift. So how can I be anything but thankful and grateful for what the gift of God has given to me? And what am I doing to show that thankfulness and gratitude? Fourthly is happiness and joy. Are we happy with our salvation? Are we excited about our salvation? I know, speaking from experience, when something good happens to me or one of my kids or my wife, I want everybody to know about it. I share it on Facebook. I call people I haven't talked to in months because I just want to share that information. Why aren't we like that when we become a Christian? Why don't we reach out to people and say, I got this great news that I could share with you? Why aren't we doing that with Christians these days? I know a long time ago people were excited and wanted to share the gospel, but that it's gone. We don't do that anymore. Fifthly is our concern for lost souls. As a Christian, we should not be able but be concerned for those that especially the ones that we love, the ones that we know they're lost. And so why we need to be concerned for that. We need to be trying our best to figure it out. I know sometimes we all have family members that we've tried, but we got to continue to try different ways, different people that can talk to them. But I'm talking more about people that we haven't even attempted to share the gospel with, not even tried to plant the seed. We have to try. The church must make more of an effort to reach lost souls, both locally and globally. So let us be honest with ourselves today. How can I be showing my concern for lost souls? What are the actions being done in my life to share the gospel? First of all, am I being a good example? Am I being that Christian example people need to see in me? Am I teaching others about Christ? Do I tell people that I'm even a Christian? Am I inviting people to even come to worship or a church event or gospel meeting that's going on in the area? Am I even attempting to do that? Do people even know that I'm a Christian? I go back to talking about being a Christian example. When we do things in our life, at work, at school, wherever we are, it should be clear that we're Christians without having to say the words, I'm a Christian. By the way we walk, by the stuff that we watch on TV, by the stuff that we read, people should know who we are as a Christian. Am I supporting or encouraging people who are trying to do this? Do we encourage the preacher? Do we help support missionaries that are trying to spread the gospel? Do we communicate with them, let them know that we're thinking about them, that we're praying for them? Do we encourage them? That's very important, that we encourage and support people that are really devoting their entire life to sharing the gospel. We need to continue to encourage them and support them in different ways. A lot of times, especially in America, our only concern is me and my family. But a true Christian needs to be pretty much the opposite of what Americans believe these days. We need to be more concerned about others, about their soul. And today, we need to think about that. Today, I want to go to talk about a few people in the Bible. I want to look at a few examples of evangelists in the Bible, but also look at their characteristic and how that affects them to be evangelistic. I think of Noah and his obedience. Noah was asked to do something by God that if we were asked that today, we would think was a little bit crazy. But Noah didn't second guess God. He didn't ask questions about it. He just did it. It also had to be hard for Noah, for people, nobody except for his own kids and their wives responded to what he had to say about what was about to happen. But he showed complete trust in God, and his family was rewarded. In Genesis 6:22, thus did Noah according to all that God commanded him, so did he. So if he would have just changed a little bit of what God told him, there could have been a whole different outcome of what really happened. If he would have used different wood, or just anything that he would have done differently, but he didn't. He did exactly what God asked him to do and how he said it, and things worked out for him and his family. So we all know what God expects of us. We know the Bible is very clear about what we need to do as Christians, and we need to remember what God expects us. But sometimes we just want to fit in this world, and we got to get out of that mindset as Christians. So we have to be willing as Christians to be different than everybody else. We just have to we have to learn to have a different attitude than what the average person does about situations. We need to have the Christian attitude. We don't need to worry about what's normal in America. We need to be more worried about what's normal as a Christian. I think of David and his faith and courage. We all know the story of David and Goliath. Through all the ridicule that David went through, telling him he can't do this is crazy, but he did it anyways. He had complete faith in God and courage, and he prevailed against Goliath. And through David's faith, he converted the whole army of Israel. What an example of evangelism. So we need to remember that evangelism is not only teaching and preaching, but our Christian example, and that we can see that one example can make such a big difference. I think of Daniel and his prayer life. In Daniel 6, King Darius was tricked into signing that declaration for all people to worship him. But Daniel, what did he do? He did what he always did. He went to pray. As soon as Daniel heard about this document, he went to pray. We don't necessarily have to worry about being killed for now, for praying, but we need to look at this chapter and see that no matter what the situation was going on, his dedication was to God. We don't really have that as Christians. The average Christian these days, we don't have that devotion. It's more the opposite. We try to fit God in when we can instead of this is God's time, no matter what. A lot of times we don't have that devotion. So it's good to see somebody that does that lead by example that maybe we can follow. We can see also that these crooked men that started all this, they got to see Daniel's his attitude to be one of God's people. They knew exactly what he would do. That's why they even did this. They knew because Daniel would do this. And so as Christians, people should know how we are going to act in a situation because of how we've been in the past. And that's how being a Christian example needs to be. He was also an example to the king when King Darius went the next morning and saw that he was thrown in the lion's den, that he was not eaten. The king declared Daniel's God was the one and true God. And so he declared this, and people heard this. And so this is just one way that Daniel was able to be an example. So again, we need to see that one man's action can affect many people. Not necessarily that's what's going to happen, but it's a possibility. I think of Peter and his repentance. More than any disciple, I think Peter made a lot of mistakes. And we could see two things that happened. We could see where Judas and Peter. Judas betrayed Jesus and ended up killing himself because he couldn't handle the guilt. But we see Peter, he felt just almost as bad as Judas about what he did by denying Christ 3 times, but he repented. And we understand that Jesus will forgive us of anything that we do. And what did he do with his life? He changed it. He proclaimed Christ and shared the gospel to his dying day. And so no matter what kind of person we were or are in the past, we can be a great evangelist for Christ now if we choose to do that, no matter how we lived in the past. Next, I like to look at Paul in 2 Timothy 2:10. Therefore, I endure all things for the elect's sake, that they may also obtain the salvation which is Christ Jesus with eternal glory. And throughout Paul's ministry, we see all the persecution that he went through, but always proclaimed Jesus and never stopped evangelizing through his life. Christians must endure for the Lord's sake. We have to be willing to be different than everybody else, even if it's not the normal thing for us to do. We have to realize that as a Christian, we will be different than everybody else if we're doing things right. We might be laughed at. We could be mocked, ridiculed. In some places in this world, you could even be killed. But we have to do what's right and biblical for Lord's sake. We need to realize whatever happens in this world, no matter what, matters. All that matters is that heaven, that I want to get to heaven, and that to bring as many people with me as possible. And that starts with evangelism. Jesus and his devotion. Jesus devoted his entire life to sharing the gospel and the kingdom, and the willingness that he went through dying on the cross for our sins. So how am I trying to be more like Christ? how devoted am I to Christ? We all have lots of things going on in our lives. I understand that. So when we are going to realize the importance of being a Christian and devoting ourselves to God, there are many things to look at when it comes to being devoted to Christ. But for today, I want to look at his Christ devotion to sharing the good news. We need to look at our lives and examine, how am I sharing Christ? What am I doing to share Christ? We need to be more excited about the truth. People, we already obey the gospel. We understand that. But for others to know Christ, we need to be able to let them know the truth. So for my final point, I want to discuss a few ways how we can evangelize. We have to start with evangelism at home first. I think a lot of times this gets overlooked even from preachers. As Christians present, as a Christian parent, it is my responsibility to share the gospel of Christ. Even though I might be at worship on Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, that's great, and that's part of being a Christian. But it's also part of being a Christian parent is sharing the gospel with your kids. That's through, first of all, as we talked about, being the good Christian example by what we say, what we do, what we watch, how we react to situations, but also through our communication with God. Do our kids see us pray? Am I teaching my kids to pray? Am I doing Bible studies at home by myself with the kids? Are we doing that? And a lot of times, for Christians, that gets neglected at home. A lot of people feel like going to work, Bible study on Sunday morning, Bible class is sufficient. And that's why a lot of times when young people get older, even if they do obey the gospel, they're not strong Christians when they're older, because it's not really brought in their life. They're not really growing stronger and maturing as Christians, because they're getting the very minimum of the Bible. And so as parents, we need to really show them the truth at home, to have daily Bible studies, to be reading our Bible daily. And so as Christian parents, it's one way of evangelism that you don't even really think of as evangelism, but it's important. When you have young people in your lives, they need to understand the gospel, and they can grow and mature and be leaders in the church one day, especially if you can start them out young. We can be evangelistic by letting people see our lives. In Matthew chapter 5, verse 14 through 16. Matthew 5, 14 through 16. You are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do they light a lamp and put it under a basket. Put it on a lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. The first thing a Christian can do to evangelize is being a good Christian example. When you are 100% trying to be that Christian example, people are going to notice. They're going to see how you live your lives. And by starting with being a Christian example, then you can move into inviting them to worship, inviting them to have a Bible study, and doing different things. We can be evangelistic by talking to people in our everyday lives about heaven, about God, about Christ, about the gospel. Matthew 10:7, as ye go, preach, saying the kingdom of heaven is at hand. We must go through our life realizing this might be the last opportunity for me to share the gospel with this person, or this could be the last opportunity for them to hear the gospel. We are responsible to spread the seed. Again, we're not necessarily responsible for baptizing every person we know. Our responsibility is solely on spreading the seed, that they know who Jesus is, what the Bible is, what the gospel is. That is our responsibility. We also need to realize We must stop being scared and selfish with the gospel. We need to share it. It's a gift that we received, a gift meant for all men to have, and we need to share that. So do I talk about the gospel with others daily like I need to be doing? I know personally this is something I need to work on. I know when it comes to evangelism, it's a whole lot easier to do it in the overseas when you're doing mission work, but it's important to do it here too, and as Christians, we need to do that. We can also be evangelistic by inviting people to come and hear the gospel. We do not necessarily have to preach or have a Bible study. I know not every person has that capability, but everybody has a role to fill, and we need to figure out what that is for us. For some of us, it might be inviting them to worship. For some of us, it could be handing out a flyer or a book just to get that conversation started. There's Bible correspondence courses you can give to people out there. There's ways for us to do some type of evangelism, and we just got to figure out what that is. But we also got to realize we got to be willing to step out of our comfort zone to do some stuff. It might not be so easy. We might not even be that great at it at first, but we have to be willing. We can also be evangelistic by praying. We think of Jesus when in Matthew 9, when he prayed for more laborers. As Christians, this is one way for us to be evangelistic. In 2 Thessalonians 3:1, finally, brethren, pray for us that the word of the Lord may have free course and be glorified even as is with you. So as a Christian, we can start off with communication, with read or praying. We can pray for more laborers. We can pray for God to open doors for us, and obviously for us to see those doors open. We need that. I know if you're considering starting, we need to pray for courage to share the gospel, to have that. We need to pray for God to help guide us through the study. I know when I went to Japan the first time, never did a Bible study in my life, I saw that God guided me the first couple of times, that I knew a lot more Bible than I thought I did, that God helped me know. He helped me know what to say, and things went rather smoothly. And so I know if you pray to God and ask Him for guidance, He's going to help you. But one big thing is to pray for the individual that is hearing the gospel, that they have an open heart, that they have an understanding of what's really going on and the importance of obeying the gospel. And so prayer is very important when it comes to evangelism and sharing the gospel. We can be evangelistic also by supporting, like I said earlier, spreading the good news. Both the preachers, missionaries, leaders in the church that are doing Bible studies, we need to help encourage them. Most importantly, we have to step out of our comfort zone and have to evangelize. As a Christian, it's my responsibility to share the gospel. For some, this is going to be harder than it is for others, but we all have to try our best to share the gospel. If we know enough to obey the gospel, we know enough to at minimum share the gospel. If there are questions or you're scared there's going to be questions that you might not know, that's okay. That's what the Bible's there for. You can go dig in there and figure it out. Or you can say, I don't know the answer. I'll get back with you tomorrow. And then you go find somebody that can help you find that answer. But we have to try. We have to be willing to try to reach out to people, to share the gospel, to have Bible studies, to set up a Bible study, maybe with somebody that can help them. We just got to take those opportunities as they come. So in conclusion, evangelism seems to be a second thought for Christians these days. I hope I said something that helped us maybe open up and maybe try to be more evangelistic in our workplace, at school, to be more evangelistic. People don't feel obligated to be evangelistic, but as Christians, we are obligated to do our part in some way. This passive feeling about evangelism for Christians, I hope, can change, and that people in America could start being more evangelistic. I know in Tanzania, people are a lot more evangelistic, more members of the church. It's not just the preachers that are trying to share the gospel. But it starts with me to start, and it starts with you. It starts with us to start doing that. And so if we can be that good example in our community, within our church, to be that example of sharing the gospel, people see that we're inviting people or having Bible studies, maybe something can grow out of that. Firstly, we need to start praying to God that He can help me. If I haven't been evangelistic, to do better, to have a better attitude. But we must also be willing to try to change, start challenging ourselves to do whatever it is that I need to do to be more evangelistic. I know each and every one of us have the capability of being an evangelist for Christ in some form or fashion, but we have to first take that first step and try to accomplish that. So today, if you just remember, it's how important it is that there's so many people that haven't obeyed the gospel, and that it's important for us to try to just share the gospel with people, to let them know what the real truth is about the Christ and the gospel. There's so much stuff being taught, especially in America, that's not the truth. And there's so many people that are going to be lost in America that really feel like they're doing it right. And so it's important for us to let people know how important it is to know the true gospel and what the Bible really teaches. Again, we appreciate y'all having us here today. In a minute, we're going to have a song. If there's anybody that needs prayers for any reason, if you're struggling in life, if sin's got you right now and you want to get that off your chest, and if you need the church to pray for you, it's a good time. But also, if there's anybody in here that's not a Christian, if you haven't obeyed the gospel, but you know exactly what you need to do, you can do that as we come and as we stand and sing. Thank you.
I have resolved no longer to linger, I will trust behind things that are higher, things that are nobler, these have allure my sight. I will hasten to Him, hasten so glad and free. Jesus, greatest, highest, I will come to Thee. I am resolved to go to the Savior, leaving my sin and strife. He is the true one, He is the just one, He has the words of life. I will hasten to Him, hasten so glad and free. Jesus, greatest, highest, I will come to Thee. I am resolved to enter the kingdom, leaving the past of sin. Friends may oppose me, foes may beset me, still will I enter in. I will hasten to Him, hasten so glad and free. Jesus, greatest, highest, I will come to Thee.
and then she closes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the song we're going to dismiss with will be number 684. We'll sing the first verse of that song. And again, as usual, whenever I come here and I have the opportunity to lead singing for you, it's an honor and a privilege.